So hello again, there's so much Brexit going on. We thought we'd give you a break from what's happening at the Palace of Westminster and chat instead about what's happening in the palaces of St James's, Buckingham and Kensington. Thank you, however, for continuing to watch both last year in 2018 and now 2019. Continues to watch in your thousands. And even though we're on episode 7, we're still able to get top draw talent into the studio.
You're too kind.
So this is Russell. Russell Myers is the royal editor now.
Indeed.
Recent promotion.
Just recently.
Of the Daily Mirror. So welcome to you. And this show would not be what it is without the brains, authority, accuracy and all the rest of it of the producer of the ITV News Royal Bureau called Lizzie Robinson. So listen, Happy New Year.
Happy New Year.
Say that. Where do we start? I mean, we were all, just a couple of days ago, standing in a very cold square in, what do we say, Birkenhead?
Birkenhead, I think that's the pronunciation. In sunny Merseyside, or not so sunny.
Well, certainly she was, Meghan, the Duchess of Sussex, was dressed very brightly for the occasion, and it was quite a good showing in Merseyside on the Wirral that day.
Yeah, it was. I mean, we were saying when we're all together, whenever they're doing a public walkabout, there's people come out in their hundreds to see them, and it's there's been no surprise in that wherever you go, and with Birkenhead there was a fair few people there.
So many, in fact, that the engagement ran over by quite a considerable amount, which is quite rare for royal engagements.
Yes.
They're scheduled and they tend to stick to their timings, but this one ran over by quite a bit.
Well, I think we're nearly half an hour sort of late on that one. And obviously that has a knock-on effect, and then coming back on the chopper to Kensington Palace had to be put back a few minutes.
Clock up a few more times, a few more hours for the pilot. Actually, we were all wondering what the story would be there that day, and there's been a lot of over the Christmas period, a lot of speculation about a lot of we don't know what the sources are of certain stories about the Duchesses and all the rest of it. But this story came from a very reliable source. It came from the Duchess herself.
She told a member in the crowd her due date. So. A bit further on than we thought.
We all said it was a bit later than we all thought, because I mean, I've seen written February, haven't you? We were presuming something around March time because of when they told us. They told us when we were all out in Sydney on the start of the Australia tour. But what did she say?
She said that she was 6 months to one lady, and then she told another one that it was due April, May.
End of April, beginning of May, which is
than I think any of us anticipated. But
yes,
I mean, you can't get a better source.
Well, I think when we were told in Sydney, I think it was the 15th of October, and we were all thinking, well, she was at least, had to be at least 3 months, maybe 4.
And that was the guidance that Kensington Palace gave us.
And then you're talking about spring, looking at where that was. So I think the sort of overriding view was that probably a late March, early April, but now we've knocked it on, 4 or 5 weeks on from there.
Which might explain why there's been no briefing or any guidance about where she's going to have baby Sussex. Because we can't presume it's going to be the Lindo wing again.
Yeah, well, whether it be a big gathering, all the sort of correspondence around the
Prince
world.
Harry will say, I just want one camera in there, thank you very much, and the rest of you can go and do what you like. So,
or whether it's going to be this hospital in Surrey,
Frimley Park,
that we were looking at, or been written about home birth. I can't see that happening, but perhaps first modern royal. There was some discussion about whether she would be doing hypnobirthing at home. So. You never know with Meghan.
It's possible, I suppose, with a few avocados on the side. But I mean, maybe we're generalising here. But I mean, I would have thought that perhaps Americans would want a little bit more intervention than maybe.
Well, I don't know if necessarily just Americans, but this is her first baby.
Yes.
So perhaps for the first baby, she might want to feel, to be at a hospital.
Yeah. And someone who is, let's be clear, slightly older than usual for a first-time mum.
Yeah, she's 37, so that is probably in the older bracket for having a baby for the first time. So potentially that might mean that she wants to be in hospital rather than at home.
Anyway, that news came from the Duchess herself, so we're not in the realms of speculation here.
The most reliable source.
A few people have said to me, maybe there was some news management. Maybe she was saying it was later and it's actually going to be earlier. I just don't think you would.
I don't think she would have. She would have had to, I don't think she would have been that contrived to think about it, to throw people off the scent. I think when you see her in those sort of moments with the public, she's very natural. And I think it was just sort of a moment that she was having with a couple of members of the public, and maybe she wanted to get it out there because
Yeah.
of the actual speculation that has been
Of course.
going off. So then it sort of settles that argument.
Yeah, I mean, there was a very good, interesting moment when Prince Harry came along and he looked at a bunch of people in the crowd and he said, "There's all women here. Where are the men?" And the only man that he could see standing behind all these women was me. And he looked at me and went, "Oh," and then suddenly moved on.
Swiftly moved on. Yeah.
I thought that was quite amusing, but it was a good event. And actually, I don't know how many of the others we went to. We went to the Women's Centre, tomorrow's Women Wirral. Quite hard to say. The Women's Centre called tomorrow's Women Wirral. And Meghan gave a speech there. And I thought what was good about the speech and about the whole centre in general, that was basically Harry saying this is your show, you lead, you make the speech. And he was very much sort of like proudly looking on, wasn't he?
He was, yeah. And the centre helps women in vulnerable circumstances. So it's very much a Meghan type project to go and visit. She obviously is very pro kind of empowering women, and but she made this speech and she did say, "You all know how important it is to me that women are supporting each other, but equally how important it is that men are also involved." So she was kind of, I think, having Harry there was important for her.
And then she turned to him and said, "Right, you can go and unveil the plaque."
Yeah, so he was taking a bit of a back set and it was sort of, now you can get involved sort of thing.
Yes,
So.
or ordered him to do the job.
Yeah.
So, I mean, and actually, I was quite impressed with that place. And the boss of the centre was saying to me, that it's in a former school it was, wasn't it? And they have to pay, so they have to raise something like £30,000 a year just to pay the rent before they even start on staff and resources and all the rest of it. So having someone of Meghan's international fame come visit, I mean, they were over the moon.
Yeah.
Yeah, definitely, especially when they were the first engagement, they were unveiling a plaque on a recently unveiled statue of Wilfred Owen,
Yeah, the first World War poet. Yeah.
grew up in Birkenhead, and a big attraction for the people of Birkenhead, and that was the essence of them coming. It adds a bit of glamour to just a plaque unveiling, but especially one of the boys' networks, so the old Birkenhead boys. They're obviously funded by donations, and anything like that is going to put them in the spotlight.
Yeah, I spoke to the town's MP. He's got a veteran MP, Frank Field. I think I should know this because he used to be a political correspondent. I don't think he's a Labour MP.
No, he's independent now,
isn't
yeah.
he? And but he was. I said you wrote a letter to them. He said, "Yeah, if you don't ask, you don't get." He said, and as simple as that. And they took him up on his offer. And he said there were hundreds of things he wanted them to see, but they picked out these 4 in particular. And it was a pretty impressive day all round, wasn't it?
I think he's going to capitalise on that as well, because when I spoke to him, he said,
following up,
he's definitely going to follow up, because strike while the iron's hot, and he was saying, there's loads of things going on in this part of the world, and which Harry and Meghan could probably tap into, sort of the helping out the dispossessed, especially in that sort of region.
And it's an interesting point you make about the region. I'll come to that in a minute. But actually, Frank Field said, "Oh, maybe we should meet after the baby," and Meghan had apparently said to him, "No, we'll do it before." So she again, which I think feeds into that narrative that she wants to get stuff done quickly and doesn't want to hang about. And
definitely, I think we're going to see her doing loads of engagements right up until she has the baby, because it might take 6 months, might take a year off. So this is her first sort of foray into doing her patronages. Solid raft of engagements. So she'll carry on.
So this is still part of Meghan getting to know the UK and the UK getting to know Meghan. I mean, they've deliberately picked different regions around the UK to go and visit. So, I think it was a new region to introduce Meghan to.
Okay, perfect segue then, because you mentioned the patronages, you mentioned different parts of the UK. What struck me about the announcement of Meghan's first 4 patronages, and there were some interesting ones, 2 handed down by the Queen, 2 that she'd chosen herself. Actually, they were a little bit London-centric, weren't they? I mean, if you were going to say, I want to help the whole of the UK, all 4 of these were very much London projects, weren't they?
Well, yeah, you've got obviously the first one, the National Theatre,
of course.
which is a no-brainer for her.
With the exception of the Commonwealth, which is not very Londony.
Yeah,
it's quite sort of global. But you think of Mayhew, the animal rescue charity, very much based in London. Also SmartWorks, which was the one that she visited first, which is about getting women, not only dressed but confident to go for interviews. And the woman we spoke to there had been unemployed for 16 years. She said.
Yeah, Patsy had a daughter and had been out of the workplace for 16 years and needed some help getting back into it, and needed really confidence to feel like she could go to an interview. And SmartWorks helps women. They give them interview coaching. They help them dress to feel like they can go in and deliver a good interview.
And we don't want to talk about the background story to it, but actually they had specifically asked us to have an all-female news crew there, and they did the same
with us,
the print pool as well. And actually, you know, it's quite difficult sometimes to find a camera operator who is female, which, you know, we jigged our rosters about and managed to do it. Because, you know, there were women in a charity for women where they were sort of trying on clothes and all the rest of it. And I think they just felt that they wanted everyone in that room to be women.
To be women, yeah. Yeah, I mean, the photographer for one of the agencies had flown over from Ireland so that they could have a
Which
female
sort of
there.
says something about how few female photographers and camera operators there, but maybe that's a separate issue at all. But you were in the room, you saw Meghan interact with these women, so tell us about that.
I mean, you could tell not only had Meghan been there before, she'd obviously visited several times and was very at home. You could see when they were picking out things, you know, she knew what she was doing.
She knew where they were and things.
Yeah, exactly. And we met one of the interview coaches there that had seen Meghan, and she said that in March last year, just before the wedding, Meghan had said to a woman at the centre that before she goes into big things, like this big job that she's about to take on, you know, she gave us some advice about how she takes deep breaths and how she kind of deals with stress and pressure. So she's very familiar with kind of visiting there and giving advice to the women there.
Yeah. I mean, I thought it was, you know, a fascinating event, and actually, Patsy, who we spoke to there, you know, she said this place is amazing. I just wouldn't have been able to feel this confident about myself had I not come here. It's not just about the clothes they wear, but it's about the interview training they give them. And then she went off and got a job. She now works at Gatwick Airport, and you know the place is you know, it's good. I think they could expand to look after. Maybe me and you need some help as well. Go for an interview.
We came onto the fact of when they turn up, it's a big spotlight for that for any charity or organisation, and I'm sure they're going to get loads of donations from that actual attention now. So you know, maybe they'll set up a men's arm and get us along.
Yeah, exactly. I'll go along for a few, you know, a few designer jackets or something. There was a funny bit, wasn't there, when at the end the Duchess was talking to somebody from Smart Work, and she said, "Oh, the last time I came here, I picked out some stuff that I had donated, and the woman told me that she didn't like it."
That's brilliant. So I didn't think that went together.
Yeah.
So,
but again, that shows that just how involved she's become. Not only is she visiting, but she's donating things. So I think she takes these really personally and really seriously.
A little bit like the Our Man, Our Kitchen, which she got involved in. It was clear from going to those events that she'd been not just once or twice before, but probably at least half a dozen times before, because she knew...
She knew everyone so well.
And at the dog's home yesterday, she said she was stroking one of the dogs there, and she said, "Oh, I think I saw you last time I was here." So again, she's clearly been to Mayhew before.
Okay, and that's one of the other charities. So SmartWorks was the one that helps women who are unemployed, half of whom I think they said at the time were from ethnic minorities. Yeah. And the other then charity was called The Mayhew, or Mayhew.
Yeah,
it's an animal welfare charity. Again, not very well known. Well, I'd never heard of it before.
No.
So we all know it now, don't we?
Yeah.
Yeah. And I think the charity she's chosen actually reflect Meghan. You know, you've got a women's charity, you've got a dogs charity. We know she's a dog lover. She had adopted two of her own dogs.
Okay, names?
Bogart and Guy.
Yeah, well done.
I'm glad you said that.
Okay. Which one came over to this country with her
Guy.
and which one had to stay in Canada?
Guy's here, and Bogart had to stay behind because he's quite
too
a bit
old.
older.
See, I think if this was a quiz, you lot are doing quite well.
But quite sweetly, she said when she was there that obviously everyone wants to adopt puppies, but actually it's quite good for people to adopt older dogs, and that when she'd adopted Guy, he was a bit older. So
Guy now lives with her and Harry, and there's also a black Labrador in that sort of family as well, so they can go walking them in their secret hideout in the Cotswolds or around Kensington Palace, or Frogmore, Windsor, the grounds at Windsor is a pretty good place to go.
And the countdown's on for the big move to there.
So when do we think? Now, I was talking to someone today who had been to Frogmore. I won't tell you why or who it was, but because of what they were doing, they were not allowed sort of beyond the confines of the big house. Now, that's not where Harry and Meghan are going to live. They've got Frogmore House, which is the famous house where I think George III or someone, or Queen Charlotte used to live there. But Harry and Meghan's cottage is around the corner, but the person that was there was told, "You ain't going down there," you know, because there's renovation work going. So
well, they're you know, as I understand, it's completely ripping it apart, and there's a lot of structural work, which was how it was pointed out to me, that is ongoing within the house and within the grounds.
Big kitchen diner going.
Big kitchen diner.
Russell can tell you about floors as well.
I can, yes.
What can you tell us about floors?
They're having a floating yoga floor installed. So they're ripping up all the. Doesn't sound very nice, but it's having.
Floating.
They're having all the Victorian floorboards taken up, walls knocked down, and a floating yoga floor.
They got through the planning control at Windsor.
Yeah, I think they know how. When you've got friends in high places, it's probably a bit easier.
So the floating yoga floor. Wow. So
I know. Well, she does the sort of 4:30 a.m. yoga sessions, and
before the emails at 5 a.m.
And we recently learned that Harry's doing meditation every day. So they'll have a very nice wellness centre in the.
They can start charging maybe.
It'd be like a David Lloyd. Go down there.
Yeah. And we don't yet know the moving in date for Frogmore. And anyone who's ever done any renovations on their house will know it takes a lot longer, even for royals, I imagine. So.
Well, again, the date was muted that they wanted to be in there before
baby.
Yeah, and I think when you look back at sort of the planning applications that have gone in, they were going in sort of under the radar last summer.
Yeah.
So I think that it is a lot more advanced than we had been led to believe. Yes. But as you just said, these things always do overrun. So
yes, maybe they can get some cast-offs from the refurb of Buckingham Palace. Anything the Queen doesn't want that's been there since 1951.
Of old carpet or something. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. So we don't know about the date, and therefore that's one of the reasons why probably we don't yet know about the hospital, because we don't know whether they're going to be in there in time. But all in all, I mean, but the stories around Harry and Meghan have sort of been dribbling out still, haven't they? There was even a programme on TV recently called The Warring Duchesses, ? Or The Warring Princesses, I think it might have been called. So those sort of stories about, how do we put this, I think as I said on TV the other day, discord in Kensington Palace, the stories are still around. We don't know how true they are, but they're still there.
Well, again, I think it started off that there was certain few instances of certain unhappy members in either camp, and it sort of spiralled from there. But they put on this sort of show of unity
Christmas time.
In commas, or at Christmas time. And I don't think it was going to be any different, was it? Because they had to be seen as a four. They had to be seen to be
They weren't
going
going to arrive at church. Sort of
and that order was always going to be the same as last year's order, because the comparison between.
But they're royals in any case. There's a certain order they arrive in any case, isn't there? But the most recent story was one about the Duchess's personal protection officer, who, as I understand it, has now left employment of the Met Police. So all the royal protection officers, for anyone who doesn't know, were employed by the Met Police, and Meghan had one appointed. She was on tour. I mean, remember the pictures of when Meghan was rushed out of that market in Fiji. It was the personal protection officer at the front of it. My understanding is she has already left the employment of the Met Police and therefore couldn't continue as Meghan's PPO. But it sort of fed, or it helped to feed into some of that online narrative, at least, that staff don't like working for Meghan and want to leave her employment.
Well, and by that token, the fact that that PPO had been helping out with the security element of Frogmore Cottage. Now, if she was leaving, as we were led to believe it was for personal reasons, she's left the Met. If she was leaving, well, why not install the new, permanent PPO to then take over those arrangements at Frogmore? But as I understand it, they're struggling to assemble a proper team. Now, whether that's because most coppers are sort of London, Essex, Kent centric, and they don't want to be travelling to Windsor every day. But you would have thought that that's a top job, a top promotion for any copper. And the fact that they're still struggling to put together a team, maybe you could fit that narrative that it's filtered down that they are difficult to work with, or maybe there are many reasons for it, but it doesn't help. Certainly.
Yeah, I mean, can we believe much about the geography? I mean, because Windsor Castle's been there, as I understand it, since about 1348 or something. So it can't be any surprise that sometimes they need some PPOs, personal protection officers, in Windsor. But you seem to be saying it's about having a permanent team for the Duke and Duchess.
Yeah, they definitely. So if they had stayed at Kensington Palace, there is already PPO teams assigned to members of the royal family, and there will be permanent 24-hour-day protection at Kensington Palace. Now, the argument was, if they had stayed at Kensington Palace rather than moving to Windsor, you could sort of double up the teams and not necessarily have two separate teams to guard them 24 hours a day. But the fact is that they'll need at least 3 PPOs, and one of those will have to do overnights every night at Windsor Castle. So, again, I'm sure there are enough people to come and do the job. It's a big promotion. It's seen as a quite a prestigious
but not
role.
cheap either. For the Met Police who've got to pay for it.
Yeah.
Or the royal family.
Yeah.
Actually, funny enough, I don't know how it works, whether the royal family pay the Met or whatever, but either
Well,
way,
that's another
it's
issue. That
public funds,
they're
whatever.
wrangling with the Thames Valley. You're going to take on some of the burden as well.
Of course, yeah, because Thames is in Berkshire, isn't it?
And they're a police force that had a massive 25% hit to their budgets last year. So there's it's an awful lot of elements to.
I suppose this is a good point for me to point out that there are other members of the royal family.
Yes.
Yes.
So
Sometimes
should
it feels like there are. Sometimes you forget.
should we do some of those?
We should do some of those.
What about what Kate's been up to this week? Because actually you were at an event where the Duchess of Cambridge was at the Royal Opera House. It's not a bad place to be.
No, it was great.
Tuesday morning.
It was so she was doing she was being given a tour around the costume department of the Royal Opera House in sort of very narrow and twisty corridors of the sort of the building in Covent Garden. It was a kind of weird one because it was billed as this is one of her passions. She's going to be doing a lot more of this moving forward, and I'm still at a bit of odds to explain to you what that means. I mean, yes, she might be passionate about costume design and textiles, but I don't see how she's going to be moving this forward. And she's apparently going to be meeting a lot of industry experts in this field.
Okay, well.
But as I said, I said to one of the aides, is she going to be, taking on the sort of sweatshop giants and speaking out on that? And apparently, it's not going to be that. So we'll wait and see what she's got up her sleeve.
And there was a family link as well, wasn't there?
Yeah, her great grandfather used to own a mill, and he was a textile manufacturer. And then he had, I think, it was 3 sons who fought in the First World War or Second World War. And she recently went to read their letters at the Imperial War Museum. So there is that link there, but
yeah, it'll be interesting to see then if there is a family link to the textile industry, and she's getting involved in that. So theatre, you were out. There was a garden visit as well, wasn't there?
Just going back to the theatre, the interesting bit was actually the little bits we got on Charlotte. I think that's probably what people were interested in.
Charlotte the ballerina.
Charlotte the ballerina. That well, I'll let you.
Well, no, she was talking to a member of the Royal Opera House staff who we couldn't identify because we were sort of ushered out to go to one of the other rooms. But she thanked her for giving
the room and whisked out again quite quickly.
Well, there was sort of 20, 30 seconds in each one. It was a bit frustrating. But she said, thanks ever so much for, allowing Charlotte a little introduction, and she's been keen ever since. So the conversation we had afterwards that Charlotte has been learning ballet, and I think it had been reported, but this is the first time we've sort of had it from the source itself.
Didn't Kate take Charlotte to the Nutcracker or something?
The Nutcracker
in December, they went to sort of just before it was the premiere. They went to see a private screening of the Nutcracker at the Royal Opera House. So.
And a couple of gardening things this week. One, not only she went to a sort of community garden, didn't she?
Yeah,
but also
that
she's going to design one for the what's it called, the big thing,
Chelsea
Flower Show.
Yeah, she is.
Yeah,
so
it's quite a big event.
She went to Islington Community Garden, and this is all about getting children out into gardens, gardening, growing their own things, because she believes it helps children with a sort of mental and physical health. So she's kind of a big advocate for that. And then she's going to design this garden for the RHS Chelsea Flower Show.
Now, I was tweeting actually in the week that if she gets stuck for ideas at any point, I'm sure she can pick up the phone to her father-in-law and just say, "Hey Charles, got any advice on gardening?" Because I think he'd have quite a bit of advice.
I think he'd have a lot to say.
And actually, because even Clarence House, I think, tweeted that the Prince of Wales designed a garden at the Chelsea Flower Show, otherwise known as the big event. He designed a garden in memory of his grandmother, the Queen Mother, in about 2002. So there was a sort of family link there.
And I think Kate's garden is all going to be about memories and childhood memories. So.
Yes, yeah, absolutely. I thought that was quite interesting. You just wanted to mention very briefly about Kate's brother, didn't you? Because he was in the news at the weekend. Yeah,
Kate's brother, James Middleton, wrote quite a long and honest and brave piece for the Daily Mail about his battle with depression, and he'd sort of taken this moment to talk quite openly about it and the kind of what he's faced. And he said one of the reasons that he kind of felt compelled to talk about it was because it's what William, Kate and Harry have been advocating through their charity Heads Together.
So when they do mental health, they're talking here about something very close to home.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah.
And they've got experience
everyone in every walk of life.
And that totally changes the game of when you think about them. It's not just them being worthy or being actually interested in the whole sphere of mental health. Yeah. It's actually right on their doorstep with their own family. So I think it adds a completely new element to it.
And I think that's the way in which whenever we talk about mental health. That's the way in which the royals have sort of changed the game in that department, haven't they? Because people are now much more willing to talk about it. I mean, who's to say that James Middleton would have been felt able to do this a couple of years ago? Maybe he wouldn't.
Or felt that he could go and find help even, he took that step, and maybe, the conversation now is much more open, and people are talking about it.
Yeah.
So, I think it's really good work they're doing.
Staying with the Cambridges, there was an interesting helicopter move, wasn't there, last week from Kensington Palace to the top of the Royal London
Hospital in Whitechapel. Yeah,
pretty impressive. I mean, I'm not sure I'd want to try flying a helicopter at all, let alone landing on a helicopter.
Well, it's hilarious because they picked him up from Kensington Palace and were bringing him back, but he obviously took the controls and then got out in his suit. So he wasn't dressed
There's
like
a really
one of the
neat shot. There's
fantastic.
some cockpit footage isn't there, of him literally flying over London. So Ed, a bit of background on this was that he was there because he was visiting the London Air Ambulance, which is in its 30th year, 30th anniversary year, to help raise funds. A very sort of poignant and very serious moment was when he watched a simulation of them attending a stabbing incident, which sadly all too often they do, particularly in the capital at the moment. But the fact that he flew the helicopter in, everyone knows that he was an air ambulance pilot in East Anglia previously, but it was pretty impressive, I thought.
Oh, and they said it normally takes about 3 minutes to do the journey, and he was up there for about 25 minutes. So apparently he's been keeping his
enjoying himself. And,
it looked like that. He's seeing the footage from the cockpit.
Well, one of the pilots said that they were playing a game with yellow cars or something.
Yeah, he said that with William, just to test if he could still remember what he was doing, that he'd point out, there's a yellow car down there. That's the scene of something going on. Where would you land the helicopter? And apparently William was very good and still very much on the ball.
The yellow car game, basically, when you're up in a helicopter, you've got a yellow car, is that the helicopters might be looking at you, wondering where they could land
on you.
To land. Well, hopefully not on top of you.
No.
So I thought that was quite an interesting event, and obviously the William's still got a real passion for not only for flying, but for air ambulance. I think we discussed in one of these programmes probably before Christmas that when Prince William went to a mental health event, he was talking about how actually that job really did affect him, particularly when he was attending road traffic accidents involving children. And he spoke very sort of, he articulated his very sort of personal...
Ties them in perfectly, doesn't it, about the mental health aspect. He was talking about that the air ambulance is particularly great at recognising the mental health aspect of their job, because obviously it's a very stressful element of their role. And I think you could be forgiven for forgetting that was a major part of his life for a few years, and now he's obviously going to be the patron of this 30th year to put some spotlight on their campaign to raise funds, because they're completely funded by donations. They're not funded by central government, which is astonishing when you think about it.
Yeah, it is, isn't it, from donations? And they're the part of actually having William as their patron for their 30th anniversary fundraising campaign is to raise funds for kit. It's a medical kit that goes and saves people's lives in London. But anyway, that's a topic for perhaps someone else's blog or podcast. Because of the time of year, we've not seen much of the Queen. Obviously, she's been at Sandringham. She's always in Sandringham until February the 6th, which is the accession day, the day of her father's death. Yeah. And she will be there, for another week or so. But so we haven't seen a great deal of the Queen. And obviously January is normally a very quiet time for the Royals, and I haven't felt it's been particularly quiet.
Well, again, this is sort of my first year coming into the role, but I understand from other colleagues who've been doing it a long time.
January and August are
always the times when you should go away on holiday, but it's been pretty busy. I mean,
let's do a bit of a look ahead then to 2019. One thing I'm personally looking forward to next week is Prince William interviewing someone who I respect greatly, Sir David Attenborough. And they've both been invited to Davos, to the World Economic Forum in Davos, to talk about it. Now as I put it, you've got the future king of Britain talking to, what would you call it, the king of nature or the king of the environment on stage. Yeah. And I think Prince William wants to own a bit more of this environmental space that his father has occupied before him, that his grandfather before him has occupied. And that's something that he's quite keen on investing more time in.
Well, they've both spoken, I think, with the documentary about Charles, he's been speaking about what sort of monarch he'll be, and William's spoken about what sort of Prince of Wales he'll be. And I think we're seeing a little bit of that coming forward, that not knowing the mental health aspect of his role, but speaking about the environment. And when he's having conversations like this, it's impossible to not take notice. So it'll be I think that will be fascinating.
In Davos next year will be really fascinating, and I think
it will get massive coverage as well.
And a mental health panel the day after as well. So two very big events, and in front of the world's leaders as well, which I think is key, isn't it? This isn't a forum in some back room of some.
Well, he's
event.
doing more of that as well. Last summer when he went to the Middle East, this statesman-like role. He's going to meeting presidents and prime ministers, getting involved in this sort of hot potato of the Middle East, and he's not afraid to do that. So I think
travelled across to the West Bank to meet Mahmoud
Abbas.
Abbas.
Exactly, and that was you wouldn't have thought that it was something that he would have done. So
right, 2019 quiz. Right, who's moving house this year? Easy, we know that. Who's moving house this year? 2019.
Well, Harry and Meghan.
Yeah. Who's having a baby this year?
Meghan. Right, you wouldn't know, would you?
No, you wouldn't. You wouldn't know. Who's announced their patronages, and we might get more?
Meghan again.
Ding.
What is 70 years old this year? Not Prince Charles, it was last year.
The Commonwealth.
The Commonwealth, well done. Which anniversary are we getting of a famous queen?
Victoria.
Queen Victoria. What is it?
100th.
Bicentennial of her birth, isn't it? So 1819 she was born. So that'll be quite a big event in May. Put it in your diary.
I didn't realise it was a quiz.
She's quite famous. She was the queen that was on the front between 1837 and 1901.
Yeah, I haven't read up
quite a long
bit,
time. Who's getting married this year?
Lady Gabriella Windsor.
Yes.
I was hoping to catch
you right on the top of my tongue.
Lady Gabriella Windsor
We're back at
and
Kingston.
How do you know this stuff?
We're back at Windsor Castle for that wedding.
Where do we think Charles and Camilla will go on their tour?
Cuba.
Hopefully.
You think Cuba?
Cuba in the Caribbean. I think that's the.
And what's significant about Highgrove Gardens in 2019?
Over to you.
25.
Up.
Year 30.
Up.
40.
40th anniversary of Highgrove Gardens.
Highgrove Gardens.
And I read a speech that the Prince of Wales gave at the end of last year, which was all about the effluent system in Highgrove and how it goes through a bed of straw. So if you ever want to know anything about
riveting.
that,
I'll have to check it out.
I can tell you all about it. It's been a pleasure having you on the programme. There was quite a lot to talk about in the end. I think we probably did 60% on the Duke and Duchess of Sussex, maybe slightly more, but
they've had
they are actually the most active,
and they've been pretty busy over the last few weeks.
And they have, and they will go on to dominate, I'm sure, in the coming weeks. But it's been a pleasure having you.
Pleasure's all mine.
And we thoroughly enjoyed another episode of the Royal Rota. We'll do one again soon-ish when there's more to talk about. And in the meantime, thank you very much for continuing to tune in. All the other episodes, by the way, all 6 of them before this one, are all available on YouTube. So I hope you enjoy, and also as a podcast. So that's it from us.